For the 40-second problem on the second ACT practice test, what are the real solutions to the equation the absolute value of x squared plus 2 times the absolute value of x minus 3 is equal to 0? Now, with this problem, there are a couple different approaches that we could take to solve it. One approach is that we could recognize that this is essentially a quadratic equation, since we have something squared. So we could use the quadratic formula. And if you do choose to solve it that way, you just have to recognize that instead of saying that x is equal to something using the quadratic formula here, you would actually say the absolute value of x is equal to the quadratic formula. And once you get your two solutions, you'll just have to consider that it's the absolute value of x, not just x. So that's one approach, but the approach that I'm going to take is a little bit different. So I'm going to do what's called a substitution, or sometimes it's called a u substitution. So I'll use the letter u as my new variable, and I'll just replace this absolute value of x anywhere I see it with this u. So u is equal to the absolute value of x, and replacing it in this equation, we would now have u squared plus 2u minus 3 equals 0. And from here, we could use the quadratic equation to solve it, or we can try and factor it, which in this case, it looks like it'll work. So writing our two binomials here, we know that the first terms have to be u, since these multiply together to give us u squared. And remember, we're essentially using the FOIL method in reverse. Like I said, the first terms will always multiply together to give us this. And now let's focus on our last terms. We know that this term and this term multiply together to give us this minus 3. So think which numbers can multiply together to give you negative 3. And we can write a list of the possibilities here. So negative 1 times 3 would give us negative 3, or we could just flip the signs. Negative 3 and 1 would also give us minus 3. So our next step is to figure out, essentially, since the coefficients on u in both of these is 1, all we have to do is think which of these combinations add up to give us positive 2. And if you add negative 1 and positive 3, you do get positive 2. So you can write plus 3 and minus 1 here. And you could check this by re-multiplying all of this out, and you will indeed see that you get back this u squared plus 2u minus 3. So from this point, to get a value of 0 in this product, either this binomial or this binomial would have to be 0. So think about which u value can we put in here or here to make just the expression in parentheses equal to 0. So if you put in a negative 3 here, this set of parentheses would evaluate to 0, and 0 times anything is 0. So we could say that u equals negative 3 is one solution, but over here if we put in a positive 1, that would work as well. So u is equal to negative 3 and 1. But u is also equal to the absolute value of x. So really, we could write the absolute value of x is equal to negative 3, and the absolute value of x is equal to 1. For this top equation here, this absolute value of x is equal to negative 3. When you put any number into an absolute value sign, it has to come out positive. So this case right here, there are no x values such that when you take their absolute value, you get a negative number. So this is not possible, and we can just eliminate this from our solutions. But here, if you put in an x value of 1 and take its absolute value, you would get 1. So we can say for sure that 1 is a solution, but also if you put in negative 1, when you take its absolute value, the sign flips to positive, and you get 1. So negative 1 would work as well. And we could write this in a more compact way by saying that x is just equal to plus or minus 1, which if you go up to your solutions, you can see is this choice letter F.